Alright, so you guys showed so much support for the first Battlefield 1 tips and tricks video. I decided to go ahead and upload another 10 tips and tricks for Battlefield 1. Now, just like with the last video, not only did I include some beginner tips, but I also tried to include some tips that even veteran players might not know about. Also, quickly before we get started, if y'all enjoyed this video or found it useful in any way, don't forget to leave a like, share, favorite, or comment. Alright, so as for this first tip, this is one I actually didn't know about until recently. But if you get a teammate to crouch near a wall, you can use your teammate as a boost to help you jump over that wall. And we're going to go ahead and use this wall on Amiens for an example. But again, you should be able to do this teammate boost anywhere near a wall that isn't too tall. But yeah, in order to do it, all you need to do is have a teammate crouch near the wall. And then you're going to climb over that teammate the same way you would climb over anything else, which should in turn help you climb over the wall. So yeah, this teammate boost is really good if you're trying to flank enemies or trying to reach a specific area. Just wanted to give y'all a heads up. You can boost your teammates over certain walls in the game. Alright, so this next quick little tip has to do with melee weapons. As you can see in this example, we're going to be using a sawtooth knife. But again, it should work with any melee weapon. And for those who don't know, you can actually pull out your melee weapon and run around with it. In order to pull out your melee weapon and run around with it, all you have to do is just hold down the melee button for about 2 to 3 seconds. Now obviously this tip probably isn't the most useful tip, running around the map with a melee weapon while everybody else has guns, but I thought it looked pretty cool. Again, all you have to do is just hold down the melee button for a couple seconds and it'll pull out whatever melee weapon you currently have equipped. Alright, so for this next tip, I wanted to point out that you can shoot your own AT mines. And I'm going to go ahead and show you an example of me doing it in game. And the thing I wanted to point out is that when you shoot your own AT mines, obviously it's going to show up in the kill feed, but it's not going to show as AT mine kills. It's going to show as kills with whatever weapon you was using when you shot your AT mines. So I was using an automatico, I dropped some AT mines. It didn't blow up the tank that was directly in front of me, so I decided to go ahead and shoot the mines, and I was able to kill everybody in the tank, and it gave me a nice little quad feed with my automatico. And since we're talking about AT mines, I wanted to point out another tip that's related to them. If you drop all of your AT mines, and I would go ahead and recommend dropping some dynamite with them as well. Obviously, you're going to want to place it in a strategic position. But I noticed the other day I dropped some AT mines and then I died, and then I switched classes to my scout class, and I noticed my AT mines were still on the ground. So with that being said, not only can you shoot your own explosives while you're playing as an assault, but you can also shoot your own explosives as any other class. So as you can see in the video, I laid down some AT mines and then I redeployed to a scout class and I shot those same AT mines that I laid with my assault class earlier. And although I haven't done it yet, I feel like I could get some really cool feeds with the scout class using this method. But yeah, that was another tip I wanted to point out. Not only can you shoot your own explosives while playing as an assault, but you can also shoot your own explosives while playing as any other class, assuming of course they weren't detonated before you get a chance to. Now as for this next tip, I was actually going to save it for a planes tips and tricks video, but I decided it's a really good trick and it kind of deserves to be here. And that tip is that you can spot a lot of enemies from the plane, and I'm going to be explaining how now. Alright, so one thing I noticed while I was flying is that when you try to spot enemies from the plane, it can be kind of difficult unless you're far away from the action. If you're far away from the enemies like I am in this clip, and if you spam the spot button, you should be able to spot all of the enemies in a certain area. And I've done this multiple times with different planes, and it works almost every time. The great thing that I like about this tip is that you can spot almost the entire enemy team, which is really useful when you're trying to figure out where you want to drop your bombs. But one thing that I did notice is that when you're spotting enemies from far away, usually by the time you get there with your plane, most of the spots have either disappeared or they were killed by your teammates. So that's one of the downfalls of this tip, but you should still have a good general idea of where most of the enemies are. And it also helps out your teammates who are on the ground. Now this next tip also has to do with flying planes. I notice sometimes when I'm flying a plane at the end of a round, when the next round starts, the entire screen's like a gray color and I can't really hear anything, and I'm assuming this is like a bug or a glitch. but I noticed it happens a lot when I'm flying planes. Anyways, if this ever happens to you, all you have to do is just fly out of bounds and then come back, and it should restore all of the color as well as the sound. So that was another quick tip I wanted to mention. Now as for this next tip, this one has to do with those little symbols you see at the end of a match. Sometimes they're yellow, sometimes they're orange. I'm going to go ahead and show you an example now. As you can see, it's located near the right side of the screen, near the top. It's like a little orange symbol. And basically, I want to explain these little symbols that you see at the end of a match. So as you can see here, if it's like yellow, it's more of like a warning. If it's orange, it's more severe. And these symbols will basically tell you when there's some latency variation, high latency or packet loss, as well as low FPS and refresh rate on PC. And they also notify you about server performance. So yeah, if you ever see any of these symbols at the end of the match, these are what those symbols mean. Alright, so for this next tip, this has to do with fire modes, and I'm sure most people probably know about this, but I didn't include it in the last 10 tips and tricks video, so I kind of felt like I had to include it in this one. But for those who don't know, certain weapons do have different fire modes. So right now, as you can see, I'm scrolling through all the weapons in my medic class. And if you look towards the right of the screen, directly under the stats, you'll see the option that says fire mode. And towards the right of the fire modes, you'll see some other options. If they're highlighted, that means that that weapon has that fire mode. As you can see right here with the Rigati Trench, not only does this weapon have a fire mode where you can fire your bullets individually, but it also has a fire mode where you can fire them automatically as well. And I'm gonna go ahead and quickly scroll through the rest of the weapons just to show you that, again, if it's highlighted to the right, that means that weapon has that type of fire mode. So now we're gonna go ahead and show some gameplay of it. One thing that I did want to point out though is that even if you do use the single shot fire mode, you can still fire your bullets almost as quickly as the automatic fire mode. All you have to do is just keep pressing the trigger as fast as possible. So yeah, as you can see here, we have it on the single shot fire mode, which again, if you hold down the trigger, it's only going to shoot one bullet at a time. So you're going to have to press it repeatedly. And in order to switch to fire mode on console, all you have to do is just press the down arrow on the D-pad. And instead of firing only one shot when you hold down the trigger, it's going to fire all of your shots. And there's also some other weapons in other classes that have different fire modes as well. I was just using the medic class as an example. Alright, so this next tip is another tip I have a feeling most people already know about. But if you press start, go to options, then go to gameplay, and then you're going to want to scroll down till you see show stationary weapons. You can switch that from showing only the heavy stationary weapons to all stationary weapons. So if you were wondering where the AAs are located, basically any stationary weapon that isn't a heavy, that's a good way to find out where they're all located. So if you haven't done that already, I would go ahead and recommend that you switch that over to all instead of heavy. This next tip also has to do with settings. Again, you're going to have to press start, go to options, then go to gameplay, and scroll down till you see on foot zoom radius. And this is basically going to change your minimap. And for right now, we're going to go ahead and keep the zoom radius at 100 and the minimap size at 100%, just so I can show you what the minimap looks like. And then we're going to change it a little bit later and show you what it looks like then. So this is what the minimap looks like now. As you can see, my teammate just ran down the street out of view and he's no longer on my minimap. So now we're going to go back to options, go back to gameplay, and we're going to increase the on-foot zoom radius all the way to 200, which is honestly probably a little bit too much. But if you look down at the minimap now, you can see that we see a lot more of the map within our minimap. So that was another tip I wanted to point out. If you want more of the map shown in your minimap, all you have to do is just increase your on-foot zoom radius. And again, for the other option, which is minimap size, obviously that's going to control how big your minimap is. I don't recommend that you use the max minimap size because it can get really big and take up a large part of your screen, but you can increase it a little bit if you want more detail in your minimap. So that was another thing I wanted to point out. You can increase your on-foot zoom radius as well as your minimap size. As you can see here, when the minimap is 175%, it's really big and it takes up a large part of your screen, so you're probably going to want to use something smaller than that. I just moved it up that high just to show you how big it can get. The next tip I'm going to go over also has to do with your settings. Again, all you have to do is press start, go to options, go to gameplay, and then scroll down till you see hit color, headshot color, and kill color. For me personally, I don't really felt like it was necessary to change any of those colors, but apparently some people like having different headshot colors and kill colors and things like that. So I did want to point that out. They also have those in the option menu as well. Alright, so this next tip is for squad leaders. And I already showed in a previous video how you can give your squad orders using the command wheel, but you can also give your squad orders by placing your crosshairs on the objective and pressing the spot button. But I noticed a lot of times, especially when I'm in planes and I'm trying to spot some enemy from the planes, I end up accidentally marking the objective near where I was spotting enemies. So with this tip, I just wanted to point out that you can turn that off where you accidentally mark the objective instead of spotting enemies. And the way you do that is by pressing start, go into options, then go into gameplay, and then go over to the advanced tab. And from there, you can turn off the context-based order giving. So that way, when you're trying to spot enemies near an objective, it won't accidentally mark that objective for your squad. And remember, you can still give your squad orders by using the command wheel, which is holding down the spot button. Alright, so the last tip I'm going to go over is in regards to the scout class. And I'm going to be explaining which weapons give off a glint and which scout weapons don't give off a glint. And basically, any weapon that has the word sniper in it, or any weapon that has at least a 5x zoom, which again is any weapon that has the word sniper in it. All those weapons are going to give off a glint or give off a little light whenever they use their scope. As you can see here, my friend and I were both using snipers, and when we aim down our scope, you can see the little glint reflecting off of his scope when he aims down his. Now, another thing I wanted to point out is that there are some marksman rifles that have scopes, but they don't give off a glint because they don't have any scopes that have at least a 5x zoom. So in this example, you can see both me and my friend are both using marksman rifles instead of sniper rifles, and you can't see any type of glint or light reflecting off of our scopes. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up all the tips I wanted to share in this video. Again, if there's any other tips that I didn't mention that you think are useful, be sure to let us know in the comments below. Also, if y'all enjoyed the video or found it useful in any way, don't forget to do what you do. I'm A1. Thanks for watching. Dip, dip, potato chip.